This play is truly nothing like you've ever seen before. Um, I've never had a play get this much love, and I think it's because it feels extremely unique, and a huge part of that is just how it came about. It's so personal, though not autobiographical, but it also deals with giant themes, but it's also really funny. The design is I'm just absolutely flabbergasted. It's just going to be a really really cool show. And I think that it kind of gets to the bottom of like what we love about theater, which is that you never know what's gonna come next, but it also packs a hell of a punch. Hi, I'm Keiko Green. I wrote You Are Cordially Invited to the End of the World, and if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about the play, please listen to our interview.
The theater experience, why is it such a unique format, both for the audience and the actors?
Yeah, I think that, people talk about the liveness of theater. I think for me, there's a big difference writing for theater versus writing for TV or film. I talk about this a lot actually, how TV and film is so action based. So all of our, when we're writing a script, it's kind of just like we're really beating out just the action beats, and so we go from this to this to this. When we write for theater, it's about the consequences to the actions. So we have a big action beat, but maybe the juiciest part of the scene is going to be the consequences and how people react to those actions. And I think that is something that does feel unique to theater. I mean, even though more playwrights are writing for TV, more than ever, it seems, there's still something about the theater that feels like we are allowing ourselves to sit in discomfort and sometimes dread, and just there's some, because it doesn't necessarily cut that quickly. We have to just I think it's actually really really important for audiences to remember that it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. And you can see something coming where you're seeing like a character you love dig themselves into a larger and larger and larger hole, and we feel, and especially if it's someone that we're seeing right in front of us, I mean, we really feel for them. We feel for the consequences that are to come. And I think that that empathy muscle is, as cheesy as it is, it's really important for us to be cultivating in the US right now.
When did you first hear about South Coast Repertory, and why did you want to work with the team at SCR?
So I first came to South Coast Rep. I was actually, this was when I was more working as an actor. I was cast in the world premiere of this play, The Great Leap. That was a co-production between the Denver Center and Seattle Rep. And we opened our production in Denver Center, and we had like 2-3 weeks off before we were going to Seattle Rep to do the second leg of the run. And during that break, I was able to come down and see the world premiere of Cambodian Rock Band, which was because we were both in it was the two big Lauren Yi world premieres that year. And so I came down, and my husband's from Orange County, and he took acting classes at South Coast Rep when he was a kid. So he was so excited. I was like, I think I want to go down and see the other show. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We can visit my parents, So we made a big trip out of it. And the experience of watching Cambodian Rock Band, the only tickets we could get were front row, which is amazing. And the experience of watching Cambodian Rock Band there really kind of blew my mind. I wasn't, I didn't know what to expect really, but and obviously that show has gone on to have a humongous life afterwards. But yeah, the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, this theater seems really special. And I think at that point I had just gotten into grad school as a playwright, and when I thought about, these places that I had dreams of one day having a show at, South Coast Rep was really high up there, on the list. And Andy Knight, who's the literary manager there, goes to see everything, and he went down or he came down to San Diego and saw, all of the UCSD MFA playwrights, our thesis plays, and our productions that we do every year. And he has just been he's just been an incredible a facilitator because this play was actually pretty dead and until Andy kind of emailed, and it was his email that kicked off me picking the play back up and deciding that I wanted to still work on it. And that's how we got here. Yeah.
Where did the idea come from your play, You Are Cordially Invited to End the World, and why did you have to write this play?
All right, so and this gets a little dark. So in March 2020, March 6th, 2020, my mother-in-law passed away, and my husband and I had just moved down to California, partially to be closer to his parents, who we knew that both of them had different health issues. And then on March 6th, she passed away, and it was kind of like right before lockdown happened with COVID. And so there was this strange feeling of we were, moved into her house, kind of packing everything up, grieving, kind of figuring out what our next step was. School seemed to be canceled for a while, or at least was going to go online. Um, and and everyone was kind of locked up and we couldn't really see anyone, and so it felt like there was a lack of I don't know, it just felt like the whole world stopped. And so I looked over to my husband and I said, do you feel like your grief has been stolen from you? And he said, no, it feels really right that the world stopped when my mom died. And that comment just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And 6 months later, my father-in-law passed away, and so it just felt like we were stuck in this I don't know, this endless cycle of grief. And we had known so many people who were dealing with deaths that within the last couple, few years, and some of them were, like we talked about how we're having some really honest conversations about how when we talk about death, it always obviously is so sad. And yet, those moments are also filled with the funniest moments or the most inappropriate laughter. And the thing that we don't want to ever happen is to feel like we're never allowed to say those people's names anymore because it'll make people sad. And there was something about hearing, especially a friend of ours who had lost her 14-year-old child to cancer. She said, I just feel like no one wants to hear about her anymore. And it just felt so devastating to me. And so kind of all of those things together, I wanted to write a play that felt like it embraced how while you are, going through the hardest times of our lives, there's also so much life still. Like your life isn't over yet, and how those moments can actually be so joyous and funny, also, and kind of support the idea of like let's truly try to remember and say the names of people who have left us. And then the big climate change element came when as I was thinking about how could I theatricalize and literalize the idea that one person can be the whole world, that came out as a kind of experiment. And I wrote this one scene where we have this character at a party kind of coming out and saying, I think I'm like the world. um, and I thought no one would understand that, or think they would just think it was really insane and weird. But instead, that kind of became the lynch point and moving the play forward, and that's how it got where it is.
Tell us the story arc and characters, and You Are Cordially Invited to End the World story.
Okay, yeah. So, You're Cordially Invited to the End of the World is a six actor show. And it basically follows this trio of a family. There's M, who is our MC, who's kind of leading us through the story. And then we have M's two parents, Greg and Viv. Greg, at the very, very beginning of the play, receives a terminal cancer diagnosis. And so we're kind of telling you right at the end, like, there's probably going to be a death here. Um, and with that, Greg, for the first time in his life, in a way, finds a great purpose. He thinks he has to save the world, and while Greg is kind of building his world bigger and bigger and bigger, his wife Viv, all she wants is to savor their personal time together, and she wants him to be closer and closer and closer. And so those two things kind of create a very clear emotional obstacle for the family. And in the meantime, we have these as Greg is kind of getting further into treatment, and the play itself is quite fantastical. So we have three other actors who fill out the entire rest of the world, and so they're playing neighbors, support group buddies. They're playing partners, and sometimes even fantasy animal creatures who have gone extinct. As Greg is kind of as his life is nearing the end, he tries to come to terms with what it means that the world is also dying. And it's a comedy, so that's the kind of it's a almost hard to describe show, but but the biggest thing about it is we think of it as an event. It's going to be one act all the way through, and it will hopefully have people really buzzing and talking as they're leaving the theater.
What is the main themes of your play?
Yeah, I think the biggest themes of the play, I mean, we obviously have this big wrestling with climate change and the conflicting information sometimes that we receive. Even we have just like this long rant about recycling and like whether and what actually happens to, like whether what we do even makes a difference. So sometimes there's like a lot of cynicism and in activation kind of at odds with each other. um, I think that it seems like, the obvious themes in this play, even though it's a comedy, can be climate change, they can be grief, they can be dying. And yet, I think actually the biggest theme that we've discovered is really this question of what is our significance on Earth? And, it partially that's how can we like can we make significant choices and leave a mark and be quote significant, and also can we keep people significant after they've gone by keeping their memory alive. And so it's really about like how we can activate significance almost.
Do you want to tell us about your actors who are bringing your play alive at the South Coast Repertory?
Yes. Okay, so from PPF, we have two returning actors. We have River Gaio as M, who's about to blow up with a big movie this summer. And they are, a non-binary actor who the character is also a drag queen, but they're kind of a really early career performance artist who it's kind of not the typical like drag show you would expect. It's actually kind of someone who is through their art really trying to understand how they fit into the world. And as M's parents, we have two super well-meaning and sometimes stumbling parents. We have Alicia Reiner, who I first encountered from Orange is the New Black and Sideways, and she's just, despite her character on Orange is the New Black, is the biggest sweetheart I have ever met in my life. We actually just went hiking yesterday, and I don't think I've ever had an actor invite me to go hiking on our day off before. Um, and then as Greg, who receives this terminal diagnosis right at the top, we have Joel De La Fuente, who I've known since I was 19 years old, when he was starring in this production of Ivanov with the National Asian American Theater Company in New York. And I was just a lowly unpaid intern and assistant stage manager, but he has been an incredible mentor to me since I was a teenager. And in the ensemble, we have Sharon Omi, who was in Galilee 34 and is back at South Coast Rep. We have her this time on the big stage. We have Anna La Madrid, who I'm a huge fan of. I saw her in these amazing plays in LA, Crabs in a Bucket, where she played a crab in a bucket. And this play Radical, in which she played the sister of this radicalized young woman. And she's just so funny in the play, and really can pack a punch too. And then finally we have Raphael Goldstein, who I've also known since I was a teenager. We were both at NYU at the same time, and he used to be a bucket list actor for me to work with when I was younger, and now this is my second show where I got to cast him, and he's just a ferocious, ferocious actor. We have an amazing team, and they're really kind of what I don't want is ever characters that just feel like a blank slate. I really want people who can bring personality and perspective, and this cast is just such a room of weirdos, and they're so good.
To add to that, as a playwright, what's the feeling you get when you actually see your play fully produced in theater?
Yeah, it depends on the production, to be totally honest. I think it's probably no surprise that there are, shows that we all, whenever we're working on something, there are shows that kind of hit us more or less. Sometimes there are shows that kind of get out of our hands, like we weren't able to achieve, what we were hoping that we could achieve. So sometimes it can be excruciating. Um, right now, this play has just been, when Andy Knight at South Coast asked me to if I had a play that they could consider for PPF, we sent I had rewritten this play and then sent it in. And because I had rewritten it, I sent it into a bunch of places. And so last year it's been getting just so much love. And I got to develop it at first at PPF, then at Amphibian Stage in Fort Worth, Texas, then at the O'Neill National Playwrights Conference in Connecticut, and then I took it to Boston Court Theater in Pasadena, then Ashland New Plays Festival in Ashland, Oregon, and this year at Second Stage in New York City. And so I've been on such a long developmental journey with this play in the last year that to just finally get it up on its feet where people are working on it for more than just a few days, where they can actually start to dig in and find where the play falls apart, actually. Like that's just been such a joy, and I truly couldn't ask for a better team.
Tell us the balancing act you had to do to tell this story from three points of views: Greg with the terminal diagnosis, Viv, the wife, and Em, the MC and daughter, and why you wanted to make this play as magical as possible.
The first question is how to the balancing act between the three characters. Yeah. Okay. So I think originally this play was a commission from Act Theater in Seattle, and it was an ask to write a play for the entire acting company, which was a group of four. Originally, it was going to be a cast of 14. Um, with a cast of 14, suddenly I'm just like, oh my gosh, I need to, because I usually write up to six actors. I write, plays where actors play a bunch of roles often, which they do in this play too. But 14 was suddenly a big number. And I was kind of forcing myself to just continue to write scenes. And so but I worked a little bit differently on this play where instead of starting to find a through line, I just kept outputting new characters and new characters and new ideas and new potential scenes. And so I think there was a version of this play that just had like 250 pages that were not even very connected to each other. But just so that I had something to show that we could read through and be like, okay, what do we like? What do we not like? Um, because of that way of working and knowing that there were going to be, if there's 14 people, it's harder actually to have just one single simple storyline because because I don't want to be relegating really talented actors to like being extras. So suddenly I'm just like, okay, everybody needs to be a little bit more activated. So that's kind of how it started of what are the different relationships that I can kind of explore during this period. Um, Also, I think that there was something really beautiful, especially once the play kind of fell away from Act Theater and I got to take full control over it again, of cutting the script, cutting the cast size down and making it six, which means that we have, so much of the play we have these motifs of just space and the cosmos, and there was something about having two trios that felt, I don't know, just like beautifully balanced. Um, and so that's how it kind of happened. It is still a tricky feat to get some of the three actors that play a million characters to get them from one scene to another. But I think that we're figuring that out pretty nicely.
and talk more about the magical part of your plays.
Yes. So the magic. Yeah. I think that in this play specifically, I mean, we use the word magic because we want to man, it's so much, the play is partially acknowledging that it is a performance in front of an audience, and this is a person's it's not an objective view. It is shaped by our MC, and with being shaped by an MC comes a kind of freedom to not just explore what happens in the play, but how it feels. And that's something that I've always been really interested in theater is again, it's not just a plot point to plot point thing. I want the audience to sit and not just sit back and watch. I want them to sit forward and kind of experience all of these things along with the characters, which means that we have to be a little creative and into showing them how a moment might feel. Um, it's just not easier, but there's something about this like magical playfulness that invites the audience in, and they get to really experience the feelings firsthand, which I think is one of the reasons why I think we talk about this play as an event. It's we're constantly inviting the audience in both small and some very big ways.
As a person with incurable disease myself, I have cystic fibrosis. I really appreciate you treating Greg as a normal 3D person, being a very passionate person about life and the earth at the end. Why was it important to you to show Greg as a person full of life, even though he is on borrowed time?
Yeah, I've talked to so many people who have come up to me after readings and saying, I also am dealing with I also received a terminal diagnosis earlier this year, or I'm a survivor. And I think that I think that we do such a disservice to people when their identity becomes this, this illness, this disease, whatever people are dealing with. I think we do them a huge disservice by taking away the rest of the things that make them them. And something that something that I've always been really interested in is, when we go to a funeral and it feels like we are, sometimes we talk about, we say like, he was a father, he was a son, he was a brother, and those are all really great things, but they're all in relation to other people. And in a way, it feels like we stop thinking about all of those people that we loved as independent human beings on their own and all the things that made them unique. Instead, we start to just connect into their relationships to other people. And that's something that I don't know, has always seemed kind of like strange to me, but curious. And I also understand it because it's us that are left on the other side. But I really wanted to write a play that I don't know, that kind of acknowledged that we're not defined by those things, and we can have these, it's not over yet. His life is not over until it's over. And in a way, even just story wise, it's also just like we watch this play, and the person that's the most alive in the play is the one who is dying, and what that's going to mean when he's gone, yeah, that has huge consequences for those characters that are going to be left behind, and that feels really realistic and human to me.
What do you want the audience to get out of your play?
Yes, I want audiences to, I don't know, I want them to, of course, remember the people that are important to them. I want them to feel significant. I want them to pay a little bit more attention about what's happening to the world around us. I want people to also feel really, we have a character in this play that's non-binary, and we have characters that misgender them, and it's never those people are not villains in our play. They are making a mistake, and they are stumbling, and they're trying their best. And what I'm so proud of in the play is that there's no antagonist. Everyone's a good person and trying their best, and It's just an unfortunate situation, and it's a really difficult situation. And so I really want people to come and know that they're not going to be judged. We're just kind of inviting everyone in to experience. You're going to relate to somebody in the play. I mean, that just by nature of it being kind of having every kind of human. So I really hope people walk away feeling like, oh, that was a play that really spoke to me. I really felt a connection to XYZ character. I laughed so much that my stomach hurt, and I can't believe that I'm leaving with a sense of, ah, yes, the world is vast and beautiful.
And the most important question, why must viewers in the theater community attend the production of You Are Cordially Invited to the End of the World?
This play is truly nothing like you've ever seen before. A part of the reason why it's been getting so much love, I was just in New York actually because it was a finalist for a big playwriting prize in the city. I was there just like a week and a half ago. I've never had a play get this much love, and I think it's because it feels extremely unique, and a huge part of that is just how it came about. It's so personal, though not autobiographical, but it also deals with giant themes, but it's also really funny, and I think that it kind of gets to the bottom of like what we love about theater, which is that you never know what's gonna come next, but it also packs a hell of a punch. And the yeah, I truly think the director Zi and I, we've been developing this play now over all over the country pretty much, because we were together for a lot of those workshops last year, and there I don't think I've ever gone into a rehearsal process with such a united front with a director of like, oh well, we are exactly on the same page. We have a lot of work to do, but it's gonna really be worth it. And the design is, I'm just absolutely flabbergasted. It's just gonna be a really, really cool show.
Adding on that, as you mentioned magic, and I truly thought your play was a magical play. What magic do you want the viewers to take home from your play?
Hmm. I think the biggest magic trick I think we talk about is that you can keep people alive in some way forever. Um, and that I think you are significant. It sounds so cheesy when I just say the things like that, but it's true. I think people will leave hopefully just feeling a little bit of a electricity in their blood.
Your play is part of the South Coast Repertory Pacific Playwrights Festival this year. What are you looking for during the weekend of the Playwrights Festival?
Oh boy, yeah. So I will be back for the weekend. I'm going to be opening a show in Chicago concurrently. So I'm going to be leaving after like the first or second preview to come down and check everything out. I'm, I'm just excited I'm excited for all of the play readings. I just, there's such a, there's such a summer camp feel to PPF sometimes where it feels like theater professionals from all over the country are coming in and audiences alike, and everyone is I don't know, just excited to see what's on the precipice of new theater. I can't even speak to any of the plays because I don't know any of I haven't read any of them, so I think but what's so exciting about PPF is that it has such an array of kinds of plays too, that there's usually something for everybody. Yeah, and I'm really excited this time to not have the. I mean, it'll still be stressful to have my show going up. It'll be the closing weekend for us. But last year I was in the slot in the Nicholas where we had four readings, which meant that we the stress never quite left me as we were trying to shape the play more and more and more every time. So I never felt like I quite got to rest. At least this time my writing will have been long over, so I can actually relax and enjoy the weekend.
Well, to add on that, how is playwright festivals like this and the other ones that your play went through? How is that helpful forming the final play that you want to present?
Yeah, so what's interesting about these playwriting festivals and conferences and all is that I think maybe in the olden days, theater plays maybe had a lot more time in rehearsal. And so, and actually, South Coast is quite generous with their time for new plays, so they give us an extra week. But if I'm doing a show at some of the other theaters, like when we were down, when I was just down at the Old Globe doing this play, Empty Ride, we have 3 weeks, and then we have tech, and 3 weeks is, the first week we usually do some table work. That's when a lot of script changes happen. Second week is a lot of staging. And then it's like, then you really only have kind of 1 week of real rehearsal where everyone's like off book and able to be in scenes with each other. And that just is such a short period of time before we start just adding tech elements to it. And I think what's been and of course in all of that you also start to realize like, oh, this scene isn't working anymore. And I would, if I had had an extra week, then I would have noticed. And of course we're still in this play too. We're still making changes in we're currently in our third week, I believe, or maybe our fourth week, our last week before tech. And we are still also making changes, but we came into this rehearsal process with a script that's really, really solid because we got to develop it and workshop it so many times with so many different people. And half of the actors, we have Ralph Goldstein and River from PPF. We have Joel De La Fuente from the O'Neill. He was in that workshop. So half of the cast is also they're coming in pretty familiar with the show and how we work and what the tone of the play is. And the other three are bringing a fresh new life and energy into the play. And so it just starts us off a little bit ahead of the game, which is so helpful.
I know professionals around the country come to the Playwrights Festival. Why is it important for the local community to attend and see all these amazing plays?
I mean, the fact that there's one of the biggest new play festivals in the country happening in your backyard is pretty exciting. Um, and it's true, people really do fly in from all over. And I think it's one of them. It's one of the few ones that people actually still do that for. It's actually getting less and less that people kind of fly in to watch a series of plays. But PPF is kind of like the premier West Coast, certainly. But when I think about the festivals where people are still flying in, it's kind of PPF is the biggest one. And I think it's because one. The plays are really great. We also have access to all of those amazing LA actors, and you get to see people who you might recognize from various things who are just like playing. I mean, last year I remember one of the plays had a cast of like 25 people or something like that, and a couple of the actresses I was like, oh my gosh, I know her from like this random TV show. And it's just really kind of amazing to see actors who are at the top of their game, meet playwrights who are at the top of their game, and just do all of this in Costa Mesa and in the beautiful sunshine. Yeah, it's just a really, really fun time. So people should come by.
What would you tell other playwrights, actor, directors, and other type of artists why they should get involved with South Coast Repertory? Why are they such a unique theater?
Yeah, so I've worked at quite a few theaters, both as an actor and as a playwright now, and or at National Asian American Theater Company as an unpaid intern. But I think what makes South Coast really different, at least in the theaters I've been encountering in the last few years, it's a really warm group there. I feel like I walk into the theater, we have Jack at the front desk, and he's just ready to tell me about how he baked some new challah. And I'm wandering the halls, and I see the associate AD Kim, and she comes out and gives me a hug and is like, "How's everything going?" I just think that there's a really hands-on approach that feels like the kind of it feels like the neighborhood theater, even though it's one of the most renowned premier theaters in the country. It really does also feel like your neighborhood theater where everybody is just excited to be there. They love theater, they love what they're doing, they love serving the community. And I don't know. There's something about this theater that makes me feel so welcome and free to fail, which means that we get to get all of our bad ideas out of the way early, and then we can actually get to the good ideas that we want to show audiences. So
And I always ask this question, 'cause as you know, the tickets don't actually cover the cost of a play production. So why are theaters like the South Coast Repertory so important and needs the community's help and support in many ways?
yeah, South Coast Rep. I don't know if people realize how many. It's a South Coast Rep is a theater where, there's like a ton of plays that started. I wish I had the list in front of me, but there's like a huge amount of really, really famous plays that started at South Coast Rep. So not only am I just happy to be there, but I'm joining a history of just like the greats, people that have gotten to world premiere giant plays that went on to have huge lives, or gone to Broadway, Um, and so I think when you're supporting a place like South Coast Rep, you're supporting the industry as a whole because some of those shows, I mean, if if South Coast Rep hadn't commissioned Lauren Yee, I'm going to talk about Cambodian Rock Band again, hadn't commissioned Lauren Yee to write Cambodian Rock Band, I mean, I don't know if that play, I don't know if she would have ever taken that leap and into writing that play. You just don't know. And I think that's kind of the most wonderful thing is you're not just supporting like the day-to-day of an organization, you're supporting the future of an entire industry. And it allows them to continue to make bold choices rather than giving audiences what people think they audiences want. And the truth is audiences don't always know exactly what they want in the moment. You don't know it until it's in front of you and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know I needed this play in my life. And I think it's only through supporting theaters like that you can actually continue to have those experiences. Hi, I'm Keiko Green. I wrote You Are Cordially Invited to the End of the World. You absolutely must come see this play because it is something, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. It's going to be full of laughter, possibly tears, but it will entertain you all the way through, and I think will ultimately leave you buzzing and talking about all of the ways in which the world and you and everyone you love is significant and connected. See you at the theater.